we actually have a partner who has a paid community that teaches this stuff. Idalis. Yeah. Daniel was telling me on the call I just did with him, we did a podcast. He knew it was a deal, but he didn't know how to do it. Idalis sat on the phone while she was at the airport for an hour. He was on the call, listened to her. It was a one call close. Okay. She sat on the phone, sent the DocuSign, got it all wrapped up for a wholesale deal. And that's invaluable, dude, to be able to do that. And people who partner with us, they get access to that community for free. Our tendency is when something works is we don't want to move away from it. So I just gave a talk and I was like, hey, you guys fit into like 3 categories in this audience. I know you do if you're an agent. 1, you're seriously considering getting out of the business because the last 12, 18 months have been very, very difficult, right? Marketplace has changed dramatically. Maybe you used to work with buyers in the past. Rates have gone up dramatically. There's less buyers, less deals being done. That's your experience. 2nd is you're treading water. Like you're doing some deals, but you're maybe paying your bills, but you're not getting ahead. There's a very small percentage that is having the best year of their life in the same environment. They're doing more deals, making more money. The question is, how is that possible? Well, the answer is strategy, because business is just strategy and people. So if I'm not producing a superior outcome, it's because I have an inferior strategy. First, you got to be like, okay, I get that. And I got to be open to something new. Then once you're open to something new, get in an environment, whether it's ours or somebody else's, preferably ours, where you can learn, where you have like-minded people that are not going to shut you down and be like, hey, that's stupid and dumb. Don't do that, right? And they have resources for you, right? That you can plug into and people that you can talk to that can walk you through these deals. Then recognize that like anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly before you can learn to do it well. Like you're going to probably not be good at it at first. Daniel was telling me his first 2 deals, he fumbled because he didn't know what to say. Like he didn't know how to put the deals together. I'm sure that happened for you too when you first clicked it on. You're like, yeah. You go from just like, I can list it to like, hey, we have these other options, right? So, and that's okay. It's worth it long term, like for sure.
Whenever there's a change in the marketplace, you have 2 choices. You can continue doing what you've been doing, and more than likely you're going to be hitting your head against the wall, or you can make adjustments and be like, okay, what adjustments do I have to make to get in line with where the marketplace is? And if you make those adjustments, you'll be rewarded very, very heavily. And I give the example of like when I got into the business in 2010, there was some agents that had REO accounts and they were like 100 listings a year, 200 listings a year, like making a killing. So if I tell people like, hey, look, like was 2008 a good time or a bad time to sell real estate? It depends who you ask. Mm-hmm. For those agents, it was a phenomenal time to sell real estate. The challenge was that when the marketplace adjusted, there was very few of them that adjusted towards the marketplace. And a lot of them, what I heard, there were one-trick pony, meaning like they got really good at REOs and that was it. And then there was other agents that did very well in that marketplace, adjusted, and then did very well in the next marketplace.
That's right.
The only difference was the adjustment to the marketplace. So if you look at the marketplace, you're like, okay, like what's working? I was thinking about this today. I was like, gosh, like I'm so glad that I decided that I was going to be a listing agent, because if I was a buyer's agent, like in a lot of cases, I'm meeting people at the office and I work from home, like, so I'm like, oh, I would have to drive into the office. Now, like I drive to people's homes, but it's like, it's a lot more efficient of a process, basically, So I think it's like when you get into real estate or when you're determining like, okay, what path do I want to take? It's like, okay, there's these different paths, listing agent, buyer's agent. And then there's different opportunities and different challenges that come with those paths. When you focus on listings and sellers, that actually comes with the opportunity of investing in real estate, because now you're talking to motivated sellers and you may run into a couple of people that are like, hey, look, I'd like to sell you my building for this. Why don't you? Or they might say something like, why don't you buy it?
Yeah. And you'll be like, great. And the same thing, like as you're speaking, like it makes me think about that evolution in my experience where, I was heavy in expireds because the marketplace was the most abundant for expireds that it had ever been and perhaps ever will be, right? Where it was at their peak. We were doing an event in California and you showed that graph and I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. That's why it made sense. Why I crushed it, right? Where I could focus just on that, do 100 deals a year, 75 work expires. Then the marketplace gets better and it shrinks. And I banged my head against the wall, and I felt it. I could feel that there weren't enough leads in order for me to keep growing, but that was not acceptable to me. So I was like, I don't know what the way is, but I'm either find the way or make the way. Then probates pops up, right? I get into a little mastermind. I take a little course. That becomes 50% of our business because of that pivot, right? And then I just stop calling expires altogether. And then, these internet leads start happening. We start messing around with one of those those internet providers that are giving you leads and taking, referral fees. And, we make $250,000 just from that one lead source in a year. And then they start to get a little, interesting, want to treat me like an employee. And like, I don't need you, bro. That's not how this works. So we drop them and, and then this evolution, like they asked me to speak at the XPCon. I'm going to be doing a talk, and I'm using like a really punchy like headline to get people's attention. Like, prospecting is dead. People are like, oh. But then I learned leverage. Like, I was the guy who made fun of media. I made fun of people who did that. And now, I'm like, I don't know. They asked me to teach classes on media because I learned its power. Or learning the skill of attraction. So it's just continuing to evolve. So it's just you need to know and understand that if you're going to be in business, period, and if you want to be operating at a high level, you constantly have to be learning new things and be willing to change.
And that's the part that I think most people imagine that like, hey, look, once I figure this out, like everything is going to be great forever. No, the challenge is that you have, like, if I tell you all the different evolutions that I had to go through to basically get to where I'm at today, it was just like different changes. The first evolution was I started working with buyers. Then I was like, okay, I'll be a listing agent. Then I went through expires, and I went through probates. Then I was like, okay, like, how can I continue growing? Like hiring your first assistant, hiring an assistant for the assistant, developing staging, like I started implementing home staging, I think in like 2019 or so. And
quietly started to like acquire, furniture and stuff, right?
But that was like a pivotal move, because what ended up happening is, like, I remember talking to expires and like, oh, you're just like everybody else. I'm like, no. I'm like, look, like, what if I told you that I could stage your property and that would get it to sell? And they're like, what? And what if I told you that I won't charge you anything? So that was an evolution as well, too, Then it was the evolution of going to wholesaling events. And then it was like, okay, like now I'm actually learning how to generate leads. Now that I'm generating leads, is how do I convert these people into listings without having them feel like it's a bait and switch?
Because that would be like, a lot of agents go down that path where, they present the cash offer, but then they're like, oh, you don't want that? I can get you more money. And now I don't trust you. So how do you navigate that? Right. So,
and then even like a pivotal move was like when you started talking about like, hey, look, like when you look for things online, do you look for online reviews? And then I was like, look, he's like, well, if you look for online reviews, what makes you think that other people aren't going to look for online reviews? And then we started putting a heavy emphasis on that. And then we started generating business from it, where people would look us up online and then look at our reviews. And even now, like, the online reviews is a piece of the conversion piece.
It's part of conversion for sure.
It's part of conversion. I was on an appointment the other day, and he's like, it was a cash offer appointment. I'm like, look, I get the feeling that part of the reason you don't want to move forward is because you don't know if you trust me. And you kind of want to do a little bit of research and kind of see like, hey, is this a trustworthy person? I'm like, what if I told you that there's a way where I can actually help you verify that right now? I start showing him the reviews and reading him the reviews. He's like, wow, that is amazing. I'm like, look, here's my challenge to you. If I do a poor job for you, go online and leave me a negative review.
That's dope. And when he was like, let's go.
Yeah, he was like, let's go. Because I'm like, look, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm like, if I don't do a good job for you, be the first person to go online and leave a negative review for me online.
That's good.
Be that person. And when I said that, he was just like, you're right. If you don't do everything that you're saying you're going to do, I can like literally go online and leave a very bad review. I'm like, I would never risk my reputation for a deal.
Yeah, it's a conversion, bro. It's great. So it's putting these little pieces together. It's good judgment. And I guess the thing I want everybody to get clear on is like this strategy, like it works. It's not a question of if it does or doesn't. There's multiple different people that are having amazing experiences and are really like having their best years in real estate they've ever had in an environment that's really difficult and challenging for most. And it's because it's a superior strategy.
And even if you look at our website, we actually redid our website recently, and we actually post on there like, "Hey, look, get your instant cash offer now."
I love it.
It's a real estate residential website, and it's like, "Hey, get your cash offer today." So it's like we started like, hey, like just like Zillow is doing it, just like Open Doors doing it, just like Redfin's doing it.
Well, and then maybe you can share with them, Jose, because you shared something at the leadership retreat that I thought was really interesting. That
what he really meant to say that it was really brilliant.
Yeah. So you mentioned that once you started to embrace this, right, whether it be cash offer stuff on the van or, the moving truck, or cash offer on your website, or having callers, looking for people that want cash offers, basically this marketing program, the PPL, like pay per lead, the percentage of business that was derived from you going into the marketplace, like sitting in a room and calling outbound versus stuff coming to you inbound, that ratio changed.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, in 2021, I did, I think like 50% of my business, or not 50, like I think like 40 some percent of my business was outbound prospecting.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say outbound, it meant like there was like telemarketers involved. And then there was me having to follow up with a lot of leads as well too. And then I had other agents helping me follow up. What ended up happening is that I realized that from the time that I generated the lead to the time I actually converted it, it was a long time. It was like a year and 6 months at times. It was like a year of following up with an individual to get them to, or not get them to, before they were actually ready to actually sell. And not only that, but what ended up happening over time is that the telemarketers got really comfortable because they were hourly instead of like commission. Like they had bonuses, but the amount of bonuses that they would get relative to what they were receiving hourly, they had very little incentive. So what ended up happening with a lot of them is it started off really good, but then it became a job of managing them, coaching them, training them, following up on them, asking like why their production had dropped, and then blaming other things like, oh, it's people not answering the phone, or the leads are no good, or just a lot more management intensive. So what I realized in the transition was that, like, let's say I do direct mail, or let's say I do pay per click, I can like literally like get a lead today and convert tomorrow. And
like right away. Yeah.
Like right away. Like I remember the first time it happened, it was a pay-per lead. I basically was out on a Saturday night with my wife to a comedy club in like Los Angeles. And I was excited about it because I was like, oh my God, like this is a new lead source. So I was receiving the calls personally. And I see the call come in. I'm like, hey babe, there's this new marketing thing that I'm doing. Do you mind if I take the call? And I did. And I took it. And they were like, hey, look, we're only in town until tomorrow. We need to sell for cash. Can you meet with us tomorrow morning? I meet with them Sunday morning, which I rarely ever do. And they signed a contract. And I was like, what just happened right now? And it was kind of similar because in home light, sometimes it happens like that, mm-hmm. like where somebody inquires. And I was like, okay. So I started, there's this book like, I forget what it's called, but it talks about inbound leads versus outbound leads, and how sometimes inbound leads can be a higher intent lead and can convert a lot faster, depending on where it's at. And I'm like, okay. And it was crazy because when I was making the transition, the gentleman that was helping me make that transition, I was having trouble letting go of the telemarketing. I'm like, no, let's just keep the telemarketing. So I actually kept the telemarketing and kept the inbound leads until I was able to prove that. And once I proved that, I was like, okay, no need for this anymore. And we still do some prospecting like through the agents, but it's not like I have, like, I think at some point I had like 6 or 7 telemarketers making phone calls for me, people making phone calls. Now it's like a lead manager instead of 7 different people,
Yeah. And so just for everybody to be clear, the change happened from like humans, like generating, going into the market, telemarketing, to marketing, where leads are coming inbound. And now you have a lead manager who's kind of pre-qualing and then directing, and then you're only speaking to people that are like ready to rock. So that makes a lot of sense. And then the other thing you said, which I think is really
brilliant,
is the cash conversion cycle. So you notice that like when you're kind of beating the bushes and pounding the pavement, you'll do deals, but it might take like 8 months, like for somebody you spoke to actually convert, where they're converting way faster.
Well, it's so funny because like as real estate agents, a lot of us don't understand like business terms at all. Like we have no like sense of like, okay, like how do you run a business? So one of the metrics that people look at whenever they're running a business is something called the cash conversion cycle, which means that from the time I spend the money, how long does it take for me to get that money back? And that's something that has to be factored in. So like, let's say I spend the money on the leads for telemarketing and it takes 1 year and 6 months and then another 6 months to close it. Meaning from the time I put the money in, that's 2 years cash conversion cycle. That takes a long time. Not only that, but there's different lead sources and different lead sources have different cash conversion cycles. So like, let's say it's an expired. What I liked about expires is from the time I call them, I can like literally have a contract signed that same week and be in escrow in the next week. So it's funny because people are like, hey, I got 0 escrows. Like I'm about to go get a real job. Where do I get my next deal? You have to understand cash conversion cycles for different lead sources. Because if you don't, like if you're calling just listed, just sold, and you're expecting for you to find a lead that is ready to close, ready to do something today, the odds of that happening are very slim to almost none. Are mortgage rates going to come down? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if rates come down or not. Lots of people talking, banging from the rooftops. Rates are coming down. Like, why are we so overly focused on this? Like,
if you simply just focus on finding the people or being in connection with the people that need to buy or sell, that's the most important thing.
Last year, rates they adjusted it by 50 basis points in 25 and 25. And mortgage rates didn't come down substantially. There was a little bit of a decrease, but it wasn't at an order of magnitude that caused everybody to come flooding into the market.